Betty McIntosh was a reporter for the Honolulu Star Bulletin on that day in 1941 when a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor drew America into World War II. But the story describing what she witnessed went unseen for 71 years until the Post finally published it today. In a Virginia home filled with the relics of a remarkable life, McIntosh, now 97, still punches out prose on a vintage typewriter and recalled for us that Sunday morning when her radio crackled, Oahu is being attacked. When I think of Pearl Harbor, I think of, that film that we've seen over and over again, the photos that I think are in this paper as well. And it's basically ships being destroyed. But what was new to me in your story was more of the personal impact of the attack.
Well, I think perhaps seeing at the hospital, emergency hospital in Honolulu.
You described them as the first victims of the war.
They were the first victims, right. Some of them were dead there in the halls. There was one little girl with her she had a jump rope on her hands. The rope had all been burned, but the wooden part of it was still in her hand. She was dead. Just like, it was so sad. And then there were bodies piled up, just dead. Some of them kind of bloody, but just like they didn't have room to do anything with them. I think it was just the feeling of fear, not knowing what was going to happen next.
And then you went and spent the next week reporting this story that we're now finally getting a chance to read. One of the things I wondered when I read it, you focus on the role of women. And I wondered if that was your choice or if that had something to do with the beat that you were allowed to cover, or why that subject?
Well, I think I was assigned to that by the editor, Mr. Riley Allen. He said, and this was at the time when I reported in, he said, do something for the women, from a women's point of view. Mm. It was kind of hard to do because I couldn't figure out why the women should be any different from the men.
Well, you made a good case in your story. I bought it. And then you delivered the story, and then what happened?
Nothing came out in the first or the second editions. And so I was wondering what happened, and somebody said, the editor wants to see you. And so Riley called me in, and he said, I've decided not to print your story. He said, I think it would be too frightening for the women to read this.
The war led to a new career for McIntosh, spy. She spent decades with the CIA, but her first assignment in espionage was for the Office of Strategic Services and made use of her Japanese language skills.
At that point, I joined OSS, and they sent me to India, and where I did something called morale operations, which is just to write material for Japanese soldiers or the Japanese enemy to read, which would be completely it was not correct. It was all lies, but it was written in such a way that it would look like it was the complete truth.
Sounds like propaganda.
Yeah, it was called morale operations.
Okay, I'm sorry, wrong term.
That's the same idea. Well, one day we got a whole batch of cards that had already been censored. There were cards from Japanese soldiers to their home and their families at home. And we all sat down all night long rewriting them. I don't think I'm coming home. I found this Burma girl, and things like that. So we wondered what's happened when they got to Japan, because we were able to get them through the censorship and then on to Japan.
You broke up a lot of Japanese marriages, it sounds like.
I think we did. It didn't help the war much, but...
But take that.
Yeah, it did sort of just quieted them down a bit.
What else would you want to say about your story? It's finally being published.
I'm glad it is, so people can see what it was like in those days. I think it illustrates a lot of what went on there. And hope they read it and find out that it happened once and it could happen again.